As we've seen, macros can be used to streamline repetitive tasks. And so for today, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on using a feature that often gets overlooked in Excel. It's called the goal seek feature. It's tucked away under the what if analysis. If you've not used the goal seek feature before, what it allows us to do is to solve for a missing input. So let's say that you are shopping for a car and you know the interest rate and you know the term and you know what your ideal payment is. What you're not clear about yet is how much can you borrow. So that's going to be the missing input. We could, if we didn't know about goal seek, we could go in this case to cell B3 and type in different numbers until eventually we got the payment formula to return $500. Let's say if we wanted that to be our payment. Instead, goal seek will solve for us automatically. So Excel will start with 0. It'll put different numbers in cell B3 until eventually the formula in cell B4 returns 500, and then it will stop. So it's easy enough to use, but this is one of those features in Excel that tends to have amnesia. And so every time we go back to goal seek, we have to fill in all 3 fields again. So we're going to use this as an opportunity to record a macro around the goal seek feature. And then along the way, will be a vehicle by which I can show you how we can ask users questions while running a macro. So we'll be creating an input box so that we can ask the user what they want the payment to be. And so that will streamline how the macro runs. Also, we'll see how to create a macro button. So then we don't have to direct the user to go to the macros command on the view menu or the developer tab to launch the macro. They'll just click the button to initiate the macro. So first, let's get some experience with the goal seek feature, and then we'll tie it in with recording through the macro recorder, and then embarking on enhancing that macro. If I want to use the goal seek feature, I'll need to create a spreadsheet to kind of work with that. So we'll start out, we'll put in an interest rate of a term or of a principal. Then we're going to need a formula that will calculate the payment. So let's say our interest rate will be 5.25%. Let's say our term will be 36 months. We don't yet know what the principal amount is, so we're going to leave that blank. Then we're going to use a formula to calculate the payment here. So with goal seek, we always have to have at least one formula that we're trying to solve for. In this case, I'm going to use the Pmt function, which can be used to calculate a loan payment. There's 3 required inputs. The first required input is the interest rate. So we'll reference the interest rate and divide that by 12. Reason that I'm dividing by 12 is that when I'm calculating a loan payment, the interest rate needs to be on the same footing as the term. If my term is expressed in the number of months, then my interest rate needs to be a monthly rate as well. And so since I'm putting a 36-month term versus a 3-year term, that's why I then need to divide the interest rate by 12. So the number of periods will be whatever's in cell B2. The third argument that I need to provide is the PV argument, which is short for present value. Present value simply means how much is being borrowed or lent, depending on your perspective. That amount will be in that cell there. Now, presently, I've not given Excel enough to calculate that payment. And if I didn't know about goal seek, then if I'm trying to figure out how much I can borrow, I might just throw in, say, 10,000 here. And notice that's going to give me a number of a payment of 300. By default, the Pmt function returns a negative value. And I always like to make it be a positive number. So I'm going to put a minus sign in front of it. So that turns it into a positive number there. So notice here that we put in 10,000, that's too low. We put in 20,000, that's too high. We try 15, we're closer, but notice we have to just keep guessing at numbers to get it to land on where we want. So goal seek is going to automate that process for us by going to the data menu, coming over to what if analysis. We can then come down to the goal seek feature. So when we click on that, there's 3 things it wants to know. The first is the set cell. That is a cell that contains a formula. So it's going to be my Pmt formula here. So I want that cell to be set to 500, and I want to get there by changing cell B3. So the by changing cell is whatever cell where the missing input is going to be. So here then we'll click OK. And Excel, much faster than we can on our own, solves for the answer. It stops searching when the target value matches the current value. So the target value is my goal. The current value of that cell is the same. So I click OK. Now, if I change my mind, decide I want less of a car payment, I can go back to the data menu. I can go back to what if analysis. I can go back to goal seek. And notice I have to start all over again. So I change my set cell. I put in my to value to 350. I put my by changing cell back in here. I click OK, and then it solves for that. So a couple things about goal seek. One, just by way of the wording, some of these questions will be perhaps a bridge too far for some Excel users that haven't worked with Excel very often. But also what we all can agree on is there is that repetitive work of having to fill the fields in over and over again. So let's say we wanted to create a macro where we could have a macro streamline this process.